We'll be doing something very rapidly having to do with additional security for our country. You'll be seeing that sometime next week. In addition, we will continue to go through the court process, and ultimately, I have no doubt that we'll win that particular case.
President Trump vowing to take more action after the Ninth Circuit Court's ruling against his travel ban on Thursday. The Trump administration says all options are on the table, including perhaps another executive order. Let's talk about it now with our panel. We have with us Ken Cuccinelli, former Virginia Attorney General, Neera Tanden, President and CEO of the Center for American Progress, CNN political commentator Alice Stewart, and Congressman Andre Carson, Democrat of Indiana. Thanks, one and all, for being here. Congressman Carson, let me start with you. You're one of two Muslims serving in the U.S. Congress. You've accused the president of demagoguery on this issue. Is there any form of tighter vetting that you could support?
It takes 18 to 24 months to vet as it stands right now. I think Mr. Trump has already shown his hand. He's trying to now put lipstick on a pig, pun intended, and this is discriminatory against Muslims.
How is it, if it's 7 countries, that?
Sure.
How is it against Muslims?
Well, here's the thing. None of the countries that were involved in 9/11 were even listed. We're talking Egypt and Saudi Arabia. I'm not suggesting that they should be listed. But this is hurting our partnerships internationally. We rely on these countries for intelligence. We rely on these countries for the investments that have been made by those folks who come to this country, start businesses, and they're hiring Americans and putting Americans back to work.
Jake, in terms of this being a Muslim ban, look, if this was a Muslim ban specifically targeted at Muslims, they would have gone after every 51 Muslim majority country. However, they're only focused on 7 that were identified under the Obama administration. And that is critical to remember. And with regard to 9/11, a Senate committee came out last year and said that since 9/11, 60 people from these 7 countries have committed acts of terrorism in the United States, not to mention ones they've carried out in Europe. So that is a serious concern.
In the U.S. and Europe, you mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Look, America's not Europe. This is a precursor to ultimately discriminate against Muslims worldwide. He's using the language of religion to enforce his policies, and it simply will not work, as evidenced by the protests we've seen.
Look, I think the issue here is the court adjudicated this, and they said you can take into account the president's words in the campaign to look at what happened here. He called it a Muslim ban. He called it a Muslim ban multiple times. It's not my words, it's his words. And then the court looked at this. So we had Republican and Democratic judges who were nominated by Republicans and Democrats so far unanimously say that this is beyond his purview. And, you know, actually, no one's arguing, at least I'm not arguing, that there can be additional vetting, but the reality of this is it was sloppily put together, and that they are actually, in a way, I think, to get to Muslim ban, and that's why the court found as it did.
Okay.
Yeah, this is radically overbroad of an injunction.
By the Ninth Circuit.
Oh, it's outrageous. It gives constitutional rights to, just to pick one of the countries, to Somalians who have never been to this country, who have never had a visa. 99.99% of the people covered by this executive order have no constitutional rights, have no claims to anything, and yet this court, beyond even what the Washington Attorney General asked for, gave an injunction against all of that. It is outrageous.
So do you think, if you were advising President Trump, would you say, take this to the Supreme Court, you can win?
No, as I've said on this network earlier this week, rewrite this order. You've now got the set of complaints from the court, basically. Write a separate order for each category identified. And the 99.99% of people I just talked about will never, ever have that order heard in court, because there's no one to sue on it. And then we can debate, the rest of it. The lawful permanent residents, people with visas who's never been, break it down however you like, and many of them have different levels of due process rights, and then write each order for each category.
I think what you're seeing in this whole episode here is that we have a president who didn't go through the normal processes. They didn't really consult with the Justice Department. They didn't really consult with DHS, slapped together essentially an executive order to do his campaign promise. And it is being challenged in the courts, and he's actually losing because he's done such a poor job. And I think you realize, I think the challenge here, I mean, you've just said it. He should rewrite it. He could have written it better from the beginning.
Isn't it amazing that what we're fighting over is how fast a politician is keeping their promises?
No, he's not keeping his promise because
we can all agree that this rollout was shoddily done. That's understandable
Right.
across the board. But look, the fact that the three-judge panel referenced comments Donald Trump made on the campaign trail and didn't at all reference the actual statute that is the foundation of this executive order, 1182, which gives the president the authority to suspend entry of aliens into this country that he deems detrimental to this country. That speaks volumes. That speaks volumes that this is a political ruling by the court. And I think I agree with Ken. We need to rewrite it in a more strict order. But I think with regard to the appeal to the Supreme Court, we need to slow roll the appeal and fast track the nomination of Gorsuch.
So I just want to show this tweet by Donald Trump on February 5th. Just cannot believe a judge would put our country in such peril. If something happens, blame him and court system, people pouring in. Bad! Exclamation point. Harvard Law professor Lawrence Tribe called this not just preemptive scapegoating, but an attack on the role and rule of law. Congressman?
I agree. I mean, I think that Mr. Trump, his impulsivity concerns me. I've said it over and over again. The fact that he's publicly battling with judges via Twitter, it says that he, one, is unfit to be commander-in-chief, and secondly, I think it speaks to his deeper need for validation. He hasn't demonstrated the same kind of policy depth as a President Obama or President Clinton. He hasn't demonstrated the kind of discipline necessary to be commander-in-chief. And who is he listening to? Obviously no one but himself.
Congressman, did you criticize President Obama when he, in person, bullied the Supreme Court over Citizens United, or when in May of 2012, when he attempted, successfully I might add, to intimidate the Supreme Court over Obamacare? I don't remember this sort of hand-wringing and gnashing of teeth.
President Obama was the anti-bully.
No, it isn't.
Donald
No,
Trump
it
is
is
a
completely
classical
different.
bully. He's a textbook bully.
Okay,
The
just
President
to be clear.
Obama did it in person.
No.
Let's go ahead, Aaron.
Can I just say, this is a huge difference. There is a difference between saying, you know what, I disagree with the rulings of a court, and to talk about the ruling itself. Not to, what Donald Trump did was say these judges, the judges, so-called judges, he's attacked the judiciary's independence writ large. If Barack Obama had gone to the well of the Congress and said, these judges have no right to make a decision about Citizens United, or they're imperiling us at writ large, that would be very different than saying, you know, I disagree with the ruling you had. Every politician has a right to say the merits of a decision. What's a problem with Donald Trump, and what should worry constitutionalists who for years have been lecturing liberals about separation of powers, is the fact that this president is attacking a separate part of branch of government as if it doesn't have any say.
Ken,
And
I'll
I
come
don't
to you
need
first
the
next.
lecture over the years.
We're going to take a very quick break.